Good afternoon and welcome to the NMOP working group. It's 1 p.m. and we've got a lot to cover, so we propose to start now. So again, welcome to NMOP. I'm Benoit Claes. The co-chair, Matt, is not able to make it physically, but is online. Hi, Matt. And to help us, we've got Thomas Graf next to me, who's the secretary for NMOP. So let's start with the first series of slides, the chair slides. So note well, it's Friday afternoon. I hope that you noted well during the week. So basically, whenever you attend this meeting, you agree to follow the IETF present policies, etc. Note really well that we're going to behave professionally in this working group, and that if you believe that you are harassed or victim or witness of something, there are procedures for that. So they are described in this slide. So make sure that you log into the data tracker. This is required for asking questions and to go in the queue. If you are remote, feel free to, make sure your audio and video are off unless you're speaking. The agenda, we have like 4 different projects in this working group. So we're going to cover all of them: Yang push, network anomaly and incident management, digital map, and update the operator requirements. There is 1 extra session on knowledge graph. Is there any agenda bashing? Okay, hearing none. By the way, thank you, Jean, for being the note taker. I cut and pasted the link to the meeting minutes notes in the chat. Feel free to help on that front. We have like 3 working group documents. This is the second time we meet physically, and 2 of them will be presented this time: the Yang message broker and the NMOP technology for network anomaly. If we look at the milestones, we have 2 milestones coming: adopt a document on updated operators requirements, and adopt a document on network anomaly management, and we're going to discuss those 2 during the meeting. Regarding liaisons, we sent 3 liaisons out. We received a reply from TMF with a detailed analysis and a copy of 2 TMF specifications. And we have some actions to follow up. Authors, please help. There are 2 bullet points at the bottom. So interim meetings, we had an interim meeting in June regarding a digital map. And we have 1 scheduled for September 11th on network anomaly. And we are considering having an extra interim meeting before IETF 121 on digital map. Drop us any comment, suggestion about interims. I want to highlight 1 specific point. This is refreshing that out of the 3 projects we have in this working group that have code, the last one being the update of requirements, all of them are covered in a hackathon with actually a lot of people involved. I've been in the IETF for a long time. This is actually refreshing to me that we've got code already at the 2nd physical meeting. Thank you. Okay, open mic if time permits. Okay, so let's start with the project number 1. which is about netconf yang push integration. Maybe one last thing, Matt, is there anything that I missed that you want to add to what I said?
No, I think that we can just proceed. Thanks.
Thank you. So the presenter is Thomas. Here is the clicker.
Hello, everybody. So we want to present some updates on the architecture for Yang push to message broker integration. We go in the beginning, some just refresher on the document introduction, what's the why, the reasoning behind this architecture, what do we try to achieve, and then some status and next steps, what has changed recently. And then I would like also to take the opportunity to give some explanations to the current ongoing notification documents we're having in NetConf and how they are relating to this document. So to look at the big picture, so we have with RFC 7950 Yang defined, which is machine and human readable, but looking a bit in the industry and seeing basically how data is being organized in so-called data lakes or data meshes, we see that the network operators are facing challenges to deal with that data. So we see in most of the cases that message brokers are being facilitated, especially we see notably Apache Kafka there. But we see that there is a lot of manual labor needed to make the data accessible. Or in other words, if I ask a network operator how long it takes from subscribing the data in the network to make it accessible in a database to the network engineers, the answers are never in minutes. It's either hours, days, or weeks. So there is manual labor involved, and that's what we're trying to address here. So at the end, our goal, our aim is we want to have an automated data processing pipeline. IETF should define the semantics of the operational matrix, and network operators can gain actionable insights. And therefore, there are certain requirements on what a notification message needs to contain and how this needs to be integrated into the end-to-end data processing chain. So just to give an overview on the different elements on the architecture itself, and I highlight a little bit in red what was changed in the recent revisions of the document. So we have at the down, let me try, yep. So at the down here, we have the managed Yang subscription, where we have first a so-called discovery phase. That's RFC 9196, where the capabilities of the Yang push publisher are being discovered. And then depending on the capabilities and the intent of the subscription, then in step number 2, the subscription is being done. And once the subscription of the Yang push notification has been done, there will be a first, that's number 3, a so-called subscription start message being sent from the Yang push publisher to the Yang push receiver. So that's the data collection. And from there, through the Yang library, all the dependencies are being observed. Through get schema, the schemas are being obtained and then registered towards the Yang schema registry, where then for each schema, a schema ID is being obtained. And when the first push update then is being received from the Yang push publisher and forwarded towards the message broker, that message can be prefixed, augmented with the schema ID, and then either at the message broker producer or the consumer, the message can be validated. So we have now integrity. We know that the schema and the message are in line. And out of the schema, we can also then in the data consumer create in the data storage the table, the schema there, and ingest the data and make it available then to the network operator. So what changed recently on the document is it got adopted at NMOP. Thanks a lot for your support, and also thanks a lot for the review from Dhruv, Andy, Feng, Queen, Christian, and Nacho. We addressed them all in the latest release in 04, which I just submitted a few days ago. And there were some changes. And so we have now, let's say the biggest changes are in the introduction section. We go a little bit more into the reasoning, like why manual labor is currently needed, and how basically this document is addressing it. Then we have in the, let's say, in the beginning added the RFC 9196 discovery phase. So before configuring the Yang push subscription, there is now a possibility to discover the capabilities, and according to the capability and intent, the subscription is being established. Then we added for completeness also the message broker elements in the overall the picture from the architecture, and also added in section 3.8 a description how the observation type stamping is being used in indexing the metrics in the time series database. And some, let's say, overall change on the boilerplate on security considerations, and also what was a concern that we are more detailing the differences between how the dynamic and configured Yang push subscription are being applied to the architecture. Where are the difference in the two cases? And last but not least, and was the last update on 04, there were some concerns about to make the terminology a bit more agnostic, so going away from the terms time series database and time series database ingestion towards data storage and data consumer. So here we are looking forward for your review and also your comments. We want to improve and push forward the document any further. Any questions before I'm moving on, or comments before I move on to the next slides?
Sorry, can you speak louder into the microphone, please?
Absolutely, sorry. Maybe I'll take that out. Now better? Okay, sorry for that. So now I come to the second part of the presentation. So here I want to describe a little bit the relationship of the different Yang push or Yang push enhancements, and also some addressing some of the Yang specification gaps, or so which are implementation related, and related also to the document itself. So the first one is on the netconf event notification. So this document is basically describing the Yang module for the netconf event notification header part, which is currently defined in XSD in RFC 5277. The aim here is that all the different components from the Yang push message is now implemented in Yang, and can also then down the data processing chain being validated in Yang. At the bottom, I briefly highlight the changes in the latest revision. If you want to know more the details on the changes of the draft, at the very end of the slide deck, I added the details, but I won't present them here. Then the second document is also related to the notification header. And here we are adding besides the already existing event time, which is describing when the message is being serialized, also the sysname, the so-called host name of the device, and the sequence number of the message itself. So the two elements are needed. First of all, when the message is being received on the Yang push receiver and then forwarded down the data processing chain to the data consumer. Without having that information, the data consumer is no longer able to identify from which network node this message has been published from. Today, network operators mostly, I think without any exception, need to augment that information at the data collection and have to look into the transport protocol to understand from which IP address the message is pushed from, and then need to do a lookup to find out what is the host name of the device and add it on top of the message. And with this, we are adding already the information at the source, and the data collection does not need to do that lookup anymore. The sequence number is become relevant to detect loss and reordering throughout the data processing chain, and is also very helpful when messages being replicated among multiple message brokers. Then the next extension, and this is not related to the event notification header. This is now to the Yang push subscription header. Here we are adding the so-called observation timestamp. You recall from before, we already have a timestamp in the message. That timestamp describes when the message is being serialized to the wire. But the observations of when the data is being observed or when being pulled on the Yang data store, this is being described here in the observation timestamping. And depending on subscription type, that observation time is either at the start of the polling process, so when we are starting to pull that information from the Yang data store, or in case of unchanged subscription at the point in time when the state change happened in the Yang data store. This one is also targeting the Yang push subscription header, but this time not the push update or push change update message. This is targeting the so-called subscription started message. You recall that when a subscription is being created on the Yang push publisher, the Yang push publisher informs the Yang push receiver that there is a new subscription and defines or explains what kind of subscription has been established. What's currently missing is we have an XPath, but behind that XPath, we do not understand which Yang module name and also which revision has been subscribed. That's one aspect on the notification. There is a second aspect on this document, which is targeted to the subscription. And in the subscription today, there is no way of selecting a specific Yang module and revision in the XPath. And the problem here is it's quite typical on a network operator that when the Yang publisher, so the network node, is being upgraded to a newer software release, that the Yang push receiver is not aware of that the Yang module revisions have changed. Now we have two possibilities. One in the subscription to ensure that the revision cannot change. So in case it would have changed, then the message is not being published. And then second one is through the additions in the notification in the Yang push subscription state change notifications, we're now able to observe that such a revision change has occurred. Another part is we saw before in the overall picture, there is a Yang library. The Yang library describes us the dependencies and also the dependencies on the different Yang modules and also the revisions of the Yang modules. But here we only know which submodules are there. We do not know from which other Yang modules these Yang modules have been augmented by, and we are adding that here as a leaf. Then when data is being subscribed and being published in the notification. The reference to the subscribed data is done in the so-called data store contents with any data, and there are already existing text in RFC 7915 section 710, which is describing in such a case what we should do with any data, but that text is not very conclusive. So this document is actually describing how that any data subscribed content can be validated with the Young library. So in all, these are the 6 documents, 4 below what we are, so that extensions on the notification and also on the Yang library. On the top, some specifications gap, so more detailed explanations, how any data can be validated, and the Yang module for the notifications. Any questions? I see Mahesh.
Mahesh, thank you first of all for finally putting all the dependency or the integration gaps that you define in one presentation, because I guess we're starting to lose a little bit of track. And I appreciate the fact that I think from an author's perspective, you're trying to get this over the hurdle of not getting and not doing it in one document to begin with. So one suggestion, and it's up to NetConf chairs ultimately how they want to modulate this, is once there's general agreement that these updates are needed and there's work group agreement, that maybe at a later stage you bring all the changes into a single document rather than having everyone review 4 or 5 different documents for each 1 or 2 lines of augmentations. But that's just a suggestion.
I think that makes perfectly sense. Absolutely. Any other comments or remarks? I see Kent.
Sorry, I'll jump into the queue after.
Sure.
So as NetConf chair, when would that happen? Some of these documents, they're all individual drafts at the moment. Should that happen before they become adopted by the working group, or could it be after the adoption when it goes to last call?
So, okay,
Sorry.
Mahesh,
Yeah, maybe I should have clarified my comment. My idea was that once the work group agrees that these changes are needed and adopt them as a work group document and maybe even go through some discussion at some point in time, you say, okay, we seem to agree that these changes are needed. Just at that point, just consolidate it.
Okay, thank you.
So these are currently the open points which we are working on and addressing and verifying in the hackathons. Here just some brief histories where we are coming from, and our end goal is that by September 2025 that we can submit the final architecture document into ISG. Here some status report on Yang push implementations, which we verified during the hackathon. So that already started at IETF 19. That's the current status of the different vendor implementations and also different draft documents they have already implemented. There is a hackathon slide if you want to go into details. There is a repository describing the test cases and also the outputs we achieved, and we are looking forward to make further progress towards the next IETF 121. And thanks a lot everybody at the hackathon who contributed on that. That's really, I think, a very good thing. We want to make sure that the implementations we are doing here and also the suggestion we're making in the documents at the end, they should be perfectly work, and especially they should be interoperable. That's the companies who are currently on board and collaborating with us. The cake. So we want to marry the two things, Young Push and Kafka. And yeah, that's the last slide.
All right, very good. Any comments, questions? All right. Knowing the number of times Yang Push was mentioned during this week, I'm surprised there is not a long line of people in the mic queue, but this is fine. Thank you.
I had a comment at NetConf, but there was no time. Olga Havel away.
Please.
So I just want to kind of mention that for sysname, I really think it's very important to have it. And if you look at other standards, they all have it in the notification and events. So I can't see how it could work without it. I would see it as a hack if you do it without it. I also think it could be useful to start considering it at the node-bound interface from the controllers as something.
Absolutely, both comments very valid, and the host name, we took it from SNMP, RFC 1213, so I think that's really common standard, and I agree on other standards body, we see that as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, I think there's Per.
So Per Andersson, Cisco as a contributor. So I wonder how that would work with backwards compatibility when you introduce them, because now we have RFC 86, 39, and 41, and they're not present there. So how would you cater to, if there are existing infrastructure that has these, that uses subscribe notifications or Yang push?
Right. So we described that aspect in the documents. So we have RFC 91, 96, which are describing the system capabilities and also the notification capabilities, and we did the extensions in there. And also we believe that since the Yang push header, so the IETF Yang push in from 8641, you have a revision number on that. You have the augmentations on that. We can do those changes. And we also think that for the notification header, which is currently from 5277 specified as an XSC, and we are defining a Yang model, this might be open in the future for more extensions in there as well, if the community agrees and wants those extensions.
Okay, I'll review
Sure.
those documents. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is Alex. I just wanted to make one comment from remote regarding the sequence number and system name and so forth. Actually, and why they are not included. Actually, in the original discussions, and it's a little bit blurry and so forth. It's been a while back, but I believe we had actually explicit discussions at the time and decided not to include them, simply by virtue of the fact that we're assuming that there's a reliable transport, and it's up and basically the system, a receiving system that would be interested in that could, of course, do whatever stamping and so forth they wanted, but they know basically over which subscription and association or connection is associated with. Plus, you had basically the reliable transport property, which made it not required to include the sequence numbers for gap detection and so forth. Something which we have mentioned here as the law. So this is just as a clarification. Maybe one question first from this is, do you foresee in the future that to use this over unreliable transport? Because that, of course, if you have unreliable transport, that would, of course, change the need for sequence number, because otherwise it's a luxury that you can have, but which would presumably not be necessary to build a working system.
Thanks a lot, Alex. And by the way, exactly the same question we had at NetConf. And I think what's really important here to point out is there are OSI layers, and we should not mix the layers together. So the sequence numbers we are describing in the document are related to the messaging layer. So in transport layer, doesn't matter which transport. Currently we have netconf, we have resconf, we have HTTPS notif, we have UDP notif. All those transport mechanism has their own sequencing number. And you have to look at the entire data processing chain where the message is being sent from the young push publisher over the receiver, over the message broker towards at the very end. And in the industry, it's very common to put in the messaging, on the messaging layer, sequence number in the messages, and that will help facilitating to find out across the data processing chain, wherever there are loss, reordering also helps in the replication of the messages.
Okay, while minimizing the amount of post-processing, if you will, that needs to be received. Maybe that's something I need to reread the latest revision of the draft, but I think if this argument should just made explicitly, just to document this and explain why it is here now versus...
Let's take it to the list, Alex, if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. Thanks.
Ken, can you be very quick?
Kent, tagging on to Per's comment. So I agree that it's possible that augmentations to the Yang module for 8639 or 41 can allow the client to discover that these extra modules are implemented. But no such is possible for 5277 headers. In both cases, however, a capability could be expressed where it's stated that the server supports. But still, it doesn't mean the client wants, right? The legacy clients, they don't know necessarily to even look for it, so they might be surprised if extra things show. So recommendation is to allow the client to opt into it, like through in this description request to have a parameter that says, I wish to receive extra. And so that's it, thank you.
Perfect input on the capability side. I think on the notification drive, we tried to put all the possibilities, how this could be discovered. We cover them. And on the configurable aspect, I think what would be interesting is we have later also the RFC 3535 BIS discussion. I think it would be good to have feedback from the audience, whatever certain elements in a notification message or in general when you're receiving network telemetry data, what should be something basic we can count on is always present, yeah, and which one should be optional.
All right, thank you. So thanks. So the next one is on network anomaly. So feel free to come in, Adrian. So we want to get first the report the outcome of the side meeting on the terminology from Adrian. The slide will be shared shortly.
The slides are coming. There is an anomaly. Well, here we go. So yeah, there's a draft. It's adopted. It's currently named Network Incident Terminology. It's based on something Nigel and I put together, and then we brought in Thomas Ching and Chowder to help us and keep us sane. The origins are that way back, actually before we even formed the working group, I think, it was clear that we were all using similar terms, but not necessarily meaning the same thing. And actually, I think we were all quite happy with the way we were using the terms until we started talking to somebody else. So Nigel and I agreed to put something together as a rough first step. This turned out to be harder than we thought, and we spent a large number of hours on the phone to each other, waving PowerPoint and getting confused. Eventually, this got adopted in May, and in June, I span a new version to adopt include some of the easier issues from the adoption poll, but that still left a big raft. Could you move your mouse over the... You just need to be on the context of the... that'll do. So what is in the draft? Long list of terms here. I don't propose that we go through them at all now. And in fact, this is a really good example of read the draft. The definitions are somewhat interdependent. We have tried to put them in a logical type of order so that on the whole, you can read through and each term will build on previous terms so that there's no looping or whatever. The definitions are a little bit terse. We wanted them to be understandable and robust, but we did not want to write a 50-page document. So there's a trade-off there. And I think inevitably, as the discussions progress, we will be required to add more text to when people say, yeah, but does it mean this? So we'll have to just boost it a bit. The second half of the document is titled Explanatory Workflows. And these are here to help, but they are not normative. So the definitions are normative. The workflows are designed to help you understand. We actually have a PowerPoint that collapses all of this ASCII art onto one screen. And if you have a very good optician, it's possible to actually see what's going on. So I spent time breaking it up into pieces of the ASCII art. There is some sort of overlap between a lot of the figures. So a term may appear in multiple figures and you have to understand that it's the same term, just in different places. The figures do two things. They capture this workflow, so what might happen and then what might happen next, but they also show the dependencies between the concepts. And that has caused some debate already about, but the dependencies aren't the workflow and the workflow aren't the dependencies. Bigger issues. We had a side meeting on Tuesday evening. There were 12 in the room and Brad and Watson online. And we worked through, I think, most of the large open issues. We converged on some and reached agreement. On others, we got a bit closer to agreement. And then we discovered some new issues. So it was actually a relatively fun meeting, but afterwards I had to go back to my room and reboot. I've got some of those remaining open issues on these slides. I propose that we actually look at two of them specifically during this meeting. The first one is, what is the intended scope of this document? Probably quite fundamental. The possibilities are just the network layer, everything in the internet, or everything in the internet and the customer sort of facing part of it. In the meeting on Tuesday, we had a possible conclusion on this, which is that we are dealing with things that happen inside the network. What we're describing the terminology for is a component of the final top-to-bottom monitoring management system, with the understanding that there's a policy blob that consumes information from the network and converts it to customer information and handles that side of it, the business side and the customer side. And that's out of scope of our work. That's a possible conclusion, but I would like to hear whether that is right, wrong, or in fact, I should be in a different working group.
I won't answer the last question, but I assume that if we scope this down now, then it will likely get consensus and finish sooner.
I would tend to agree that the more compact this is, the easier it is to reach consensus. Additionally, I'd add to that that the bigger it is, the more it overlaps with work in other standards bodies and becomes a multi-dimensional problem.
So in that case, I think it'd be great if the other documents that we're working on will be able to refer to this and use this as a base document. And I don't want this document to end up holding up all the other work. So I think it's better to scope this down to the network layer. That's what we're aiming on and thinking about. Hopefully with the ability to extend or write more documents covering these other things if we need them.
I see some nodding going on, but nobody in the line. Chairs, do you think that's what our charter tells us we can do or must do or should do?
I think that you're about right with your conclusion, but what I was thinking and trying to get a quick sync with Matt is maybe that's something that we want to poll people in the room, telling do we agree with the conclusion which is there, we're dealing with network incidents, and your conclusion there. I would appreciate, because maybe some people will have different views.
Okay, so while you set up a poll, Laurent.
Yeah, so question is, is it the intention that this becomes an RFC to be valid or to be, let's say, a snapshot in time? Why not keep it as, I don't know, a reference on a wiki page that we can keep updating? The reference is still there. Because I think the question you're asking is also subject to why we want to make it, how we make it stable, and will there be updates? So just
yeah, the wiki page question is really interesting. My personal view is it's really hard to understand when you have consensus on a wiki page. But you're right, it's much more flexible for fixing things and adding things.
So Mahesh, as a contributor, I would agree with Rob's comment. I think it would be better to scope it down, keep it into that tight scope so that the rest of the documents are not blocked. And of course, as a area, I was going to suggest that you have a poll, which is already on the screen. So I'll go poll.
All right, so I don't see anybody else in the queue. I see like a strong support with your conclusion. I was expecting that if there was a no, someone would not support us, would like to hear the reason. But I don't see any no in the list. So it seems that you've got your conclusion. Ken, unless you want to
Yeah,
add
this is
something.
Kent. I tried to respond to the poll, but I didn't understand the question, so I did not respond to the poll.
Okay.
Well, since it's phrased as, do you agree with Adrian's conclusion? Perhaps I should state what I think my conclusion was.
Yes, exactly that.
Okay, I was thinking the one on the slide.
Yeah, it's the one on the slide, which of course nobody can see because there's a poll on front of it. That we should scope down to network-related terminology. I have to say I'm extremely relieved with that poll. I don't know if you need to take it to the list as well or not, but until I hear otherwise, I will go on that assumption.
Thank you.
Number two, who is the consumer of this work? So we could be developing and reaching consensus on terms. I haven't even listed it. For use only within this working group. It could be developed terms for consistent use within the whole of the IETF, we hope. And then we might add into that a hope and desire that other bodies would pick up and use those terms. And then a possibility, a different view of this is that we should be attempting to harmonize terms already used across other bodies. So the meeting on Tuesday reached a possible conclusion that the principal target is that IETF-wide use, remembering that this is scoped down to network, so bits of the IETF that are off in la security land might not see these as relevant, or they might have different terms. But you know, we're trying to push everything network related, these terms. We'd be okay, probably delighted if other bodies pick up the terms, but we're not marketing them, we're not pushing them that way. We would only use terms in other bodies if we found them and found that the language and the term was useful and consistent, and then we point or include. But we also picked up an additional, excuse me, an additional step, which is that we should look carefully at existing RFCs, especially ones with widespread use, and try to pick up those terms by reference. Alarm was one that was particularly noticed. So if there was a poll, the question would be, are you typing a poll or not? No, you're allowed to.
Right. Okay. Let's see if we converge on the question.
Well, hang on. If we don't even know what the question is, go on, Mahesh.
There are people in the queue
dig
anyway.
us out. Dig us out, Mahesh.
Alex is there before me, so.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I do have one comment regarding C. I think actually it is necessary to harmonize it with terms in other bodies, and specifically what comes to mind is ITIL, the IT infrastructure library. This talks actually extensively about incident management, of course, a little bit beyond network incidents, but there's a rich body of also of standards, terminology that I think this work should look at and potentially adopt.
So look at, I agree completely. I have to confess that I ordered these questions, question 1 and question 2, deliberately, because ITIL is substantially up there at the service interface. Nevertheless, what you say, if we find a term that's already used and we like it, then harmonize, sure. If we find two bodies that use the same term in two different ways, then I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, clearly ITIL is at a somewhat different layer. However, they do talk about incident management. So at least as far as incidents and the related terminology is concerned, I think there's definitely some alignment to be harvested, I guess.
Mahesh, so, and this is more, I'm thinking from a process perspective, wondering how you would do this across the IETF. Which groups would you target to try to figure out the kind of terms that you're trying to look at? And more also to the last point about reusing term definitions that are already in other RFCs, and whether those definitions actually will line up with what this working group thinks are incidents.
So process-wise, I think we need to get closer to consensus and then start involving other people in reviewing it and seeing whether they think it's appropriate. I suppose ultimately we have an IETF last call.
Okay.
I quite like the idea of doing the poll first and then figuring out the question afterwards. But so one of the comments, I basically agree with what you're proposing here. This looks pragmatic and it goes back to the original previous question of can we get this done under a reasonable time frame? The one comment I would have is in terms of referencing definitions of other RFCs, it's good. It depends how many of those are. There's a few. It'd be nice to sort of be able to copy the definition here and say we're taking it from there, and so this is an informative copy of it. Go and look here, but still not have to go and chase lots of references and things like that. Maybe. I know there's a risk that way.
Yeah, swings and roundabouts on that, but yes.
So I'm still a little confused by the question. Propose possible conclusion. Because you clearly have 3 options there.
Well,
No, the possible conclusion is a bit halfway down the slide,
yes.
Oh,
which
okay.
is basically saying we're targeting the first option as our principal thing. Other things may come along, but that's not our main thrust.
My name is Joseph Nicholson. I'm with NTT. I want to follow on Alexander's previous comments about looking at other standards bodies like ITIL. Currently, from an operator standpoint, a lot of our ticketing systems and monitoring systems are based off of those standards and use those terminologies. And if we don't take those into consideration, you could run into the same situation again that you started out with, where you're talking about different definitions for the same topics from that perspective down the line. So,
Yeah, noted.
So one more time, it seems that you've got your answer, Adrian, right?
Looking good, although I actually hear there's a little bit of caution on this one.
Exactly.
Right. Rest of the slides I will whiz through because I don't think we discussed them now. I will be bringing these as specific threads to the list. So we've all been talking about what the document currently says, network incident. We have discovered that incident is massively critically overloaded in everybody's documents, and they don't always mean the same thing. And even if you buy a software package, it's not necessarily the same thing it's talking about. So a possible conclusion is fault, but we'll come back to that. Root cause, we've got in the current document, we basically discovered in discussion, root cause is kind of meaningless. It's maybe a possible root cause or I hope this is the only root cause, and we can do without that and just go with cause. Alert and alarm, we've got both. 8632 is very good on alarm, and we think we collapse the two. So what are we going to do? As was mentioned earlier, this seems to be kind of urgent to get this stable so everybody can converge on using it. So a new revision soon to pick up some of the agreements. A lot of iterations, and just because it's in the draft doesn't mean you can't talk about it. So keep that going on the list, separate threads for each thing, and hopefully we get there.
All right, thank you. So we just close the queue. You're perfectly on time. So thank you for doing this, Adrian. As you mentioned, it was an interesting meeting, side meeting, but at least you got some answers today.
Interesting.
Yes, I remember you told me at the end, I wish I could say it was a fun meeting, and I arrived at the same conclusion. Okay, so now we've got the architecture for a network anomaly detection framework.
Let's get started. So I will be presenting with Vincenzo together. So it's a new document. So the reason for this document is it describes the motivation and generic and extensible architecture of network anomaly detection framework. And it anchors the two documents which we already previously at IETF 119 showed regarding the anomaly detection semantics, so describing the symptoms which are detected, and the anomaly life cycle, so how to refine the system to have there two references. And also at the very end of the documentation, we started already by describing some of the applications where this architecture has been applied, and will be in the future continuously updating that section as well. So from a high level perspective, there are different analytical use cases which needs to be covered at the network operator. The focus is on anomaly detection. The data which is being consumed from the network is network telemetry data. So we are looking from different network plane perspectives. The architecture is overall, it integrates into so-called the data mesh architecture, where we are consuming operational data and producing analytical data, and the semantics and the life cycle are targeting the analytical data. We have RFC 8632 regarding the alarms. I should change that from alert. And basically the life cycle is part on the postmortem process. So what we care, we are monitoring connectivity services from all the different, all the three network planes. So we are constantly monitoring basically whatever changes in the network are negatively impacting the forwarding of the packets of the customers. And if it is that we are raising alerts and describing the symptoms which the network anomaly detection system has been observed. Take over for me on one more. Okay. So motivation here on the postmortem side is that we need to improve. The anomaly detection system won't be working perfectly in the beginning. So there is a refinement process needed. So once an anomaly is detected and also data is being labeled, afterwards those labeling, those annotations needs to be refined, and then it's an iterative process. And what's also quite important is one single network operator doesn't have enough incident. We need a lot of incident data to improve the system. So there is a wish of having a lot of incidents, and in order to do that, we want to collaborate and exchange labeled incident data. These are the elements of the architecture. I don't go into the different details, but you will see that there are message broker components. So basically the network telemetry data is consumable from the message broker. There is a layer of data aggregation, and also the data is being network modeled. So we have relationship among the different data among the different planes. There is a streaming part where this is being observed in real time, and then possible impact is being detected and then consolidated into one single alert message, where in this alert message all the different perspectives from the network are being consolidated, and then that consolidated message is then going towards the alert and problem management system, where it's being handled by the network operator, but also towards the post-mortem system, where then the refinement process is starting.
Hi everyone, Vincenzo here, working for Huawei. So Thomas has been talking about the first draft, which is describing the overall architecture of the network anomaly detection system. There are other two documents which are under the same umbrella and under the same project substantially. One is called network anomaly semantics. This is really about, so this is trying to solve a very specific problem in the context of the network anomaly detection, which is, can we find a way to build labeled data sets for network operators to share their data with vendors and academia? And this tends to work in the direction of improving the quality of the detection system. So exchanging knowledge, exchanging understanding, and improving systems overall. And as a result of the effort that we've been doing, basically, is the definition of this Young model, which is trying to define what is a symptom, substantially, referring also to the draft that Adrian was discussing before. So the symptom here has been described with a set of fields where we substantially describe what a symptom is and high-level set of fields. And we provide tags, which are quite important to define the semantic metadata. And then we also specify some information about the annotator. You will get in a couple of slides why this is important. The other document is called Network Anomaly Lifecycle. Here, the objective is slightly different, but again, it's trying to provide a way to improve the quality and the accuracy of your network anomaly detection system. So, working on this problem of network anomaly detection system independently at the beginning, we all realized the need of kind of improving the network anomaly detection over time. So when we sat together and we started to look at this problem, we understood that this is something that many people which will jump into the network anomaly detection, or all the people that are currently working on it, are actually facing. And this is about the fact that it's really difficult to get a network anomaly detection system, either rule-based or machine learning-based, to work properly the first time. So you have to have in place some kind of cycle where you learn from the mistakes and you try to incorporate knowledge back into the detection system. So we identify these three stages of the life cycle, which are the detection. So basically the system receives the telemetry and decides if something is anomalous or not. There is the validation, which is where a network engineer can jump in and say what's right, what's wrong, how to fix it, how to improve it, and so forth. And there's the refinement part, which is where, for example, a data scientist might come in and say, oh, I have my machine learning model doing the detection. I have my new set of labels. Now I can improve my model. I can retrain my model and come up with a better detection system. So this is where this life cycle fits in. As a result of this work, we also defined a state machine in the context of the life cycle, and a Young data model which describes a network anomaly as a list, as a collection of symptoms substantially. And again, you have the annotator information here. Now you understand why this is important, because basically at each stage of the life cycle, you have different annotators. By annotators, we mean what's the entity that actually produces the label if something is anomalous or not, and all the different fields. And it's quite important this, because this would let you see if this is a network engineer saying that this is an anomaly, or if it's a machine learning system and so forth, right? These work, so actually last year, November, I started playing with this antagonist thing, which was kind of a toy thing, and then slowly it became a bit of a bigger project. So we started kind of expanding the scope, and eventually we realized that there is kind of a gap in the MLOps tooling system at the moment, and I haven't seen anything like a label store. Why do we need a label store? If you want to implement that life cycle, you need a place where you have to store and share your labels, and you need a structure, a standard format for exchanging that information, which is semantically appropriate and correct and fully understood. So you kind of need to have a shared understanding of this. So in the hackathon this year, this IETF, we actually we've been doing a little bit of work here. The goal for the hackathon is the set of goals for the hackathon are actually just to try and see if the models that we have in the drafts are containing all the necessary information, and we want to validate those across a wide range of use cases and show that there is interoperability between the different stages of the life cycle. So let's say for this hackathon, the main focus was the life cycle draft. There's a little bit of work that we will need to do in the future for the metadata semantic draft for the validation. But basically, we've been validating this with real operational data from the cloud monitoring domain. We've been validating this system actually also internally in Huawei with an implementation that we are currently providing on the RFC 9417, 9418. We've been able to validate this full life cycle with a real machine learning model on the cloud domain. We've been using an autoencoder, and for that we actually implemented a few notebooks that you can see up there for the provisioning of a detector and refiner. And we also have a GUI for the validation where like a network engineer can easily validate the labels. And yeah, so I guess so far the work on for the lifecycle draft is very much in a very good shape. I think not major changes to the young models, and I have the feeling that it's almost ready for evaluation of adoption. For what concerns the roadmap and the future timeframes, I will let Thomas address this in the next couple of slides.
Your Q&A is part of that time, right?
Okay. So I move forward real quick. So at Swisscom, we already have approximately 2 years experience, half a year in the lab, 18 months in production network. I just put some key figures together. The system is being developed in several phases. So we started with a limited POC in production network, and now moving forward more to a higher deployment where we have a broader coverage of the amount of layer 3 VPNs which we are monitoring. And these 2 slides should be just give some insights on how many checks, how many verifications in which network incident applied, and how effective the system was. So coming to the status of the draft, so the anomaly architecture document is new. We just published that a few weeks ago, and the semantics and the lifecycle documents have been updated. So they are now both referencing the anomaly detection architecture document, and all the documents have now proper references on the terminology which is being defined in the NMOP terminology. And we moved some of the sections which we had previously in the semantics draft, describing the integration aspect and also the types of outlier detection architecture possibilities we have, and moved it towards the architecture document. Our recommendation is to move forward from here, starting the adoption with the architecture document, and from there subsequently going towards the semantics and the lifecycle document.
Very good. Any question, answer, feedback on this one? Okay. So maybe what we could be doing is a kind of a quick poll on who read the draft. We speak about here the architecture. Discussing with Matt, we tend to agree that the architecture is the main document and the other are going to be linked to it. So maybe if we have to adopt one, that's maybe the one that we need to start with.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's another point is that we would really like to have more experiments, and not only the same group, I would say, participating in this area. So this is not against what Thomas mentioned, and also Vincenzo, but we really would like to have, I would say, more contributors. And so this is something which is not closed. So we would really like that more eyes be put on the Encore document with the architecture, so that we make sure that this is something that will be open for additional matters. So that's why we are just starting considering the architecture one. For the other specific documents, we will discuss them during the next interim meeting.
Excellent, thanks. And maybe like there is an interim meeting coming up, right, on September 11th, and there we want to bring a bit more insight, more on some examples on incident post-mortems from Swisscom and also from Bell, and also detailing some of the hackathon experiments we did, and also some document updates where the document is progressing.
Very good, thank you. So maybe a next poll would be that whether you support adopting this working document as an anchor to the anomaly detection work in the working group. And Matt is super fast typing. All right, very good. So it seems that we've got all yes, no opinion, and there is 0 no. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
So now this is like the digital map, issues related to deployment usage of the Yang topology modules. So Olga, you've got like 10 minutes plus 5 of Q&A, right? So it depends how you want to do that.
Yeah. So I'll present on behalf of the authors digital map IETF NMOP status, but focusing on the digital map concept draft.
Can you rotate the microphone?
Time. Sorry, I'll be focusing on the digital map concept draft because we don't have enough time, and then maybe depending if there is any time left, I'll go into the status of the other drafts. So I'll talk about the updates since last digital map intern meeting that we had, and I'll propose an action plan for digital map activities, and I'll share some open questions we have. So this is the summary of the all activities around digital map. As you can see, we have 3 drafts, NMOP drafts that are generic ones. Then there are 2 IGP drafts, Oscar's drafts for ISIS or SPF. Then we did RFC 8345 augmentation analysis and got a contribution for some of the authors. There was a hackathon that Benoit talked about, and we started looking into doing RFC 8345 BIS. We had a side meeting with this team and started looking at the potential changes needed. But this presentation will focus on the digital map concept draft, and for all the others, I sent an email prior to this meeting with links to the documentation, and this set of slides also has more information and the help slides if you are interested. So this draft defines the concept of the digital map, explains how it's related to the digital twin, and identifies the set of the requirements and use cases. We spent some time collecting those from the operators, and we communicated that in this draft. And based on the recommendation from the NMOP co-chair, Med, this document was extracted from the main draft digital map document. And the reasons for that is because there is a lot of interest about the digital map and how it relates to the digital twin. So we want to kind of bring it to those who are interested in those aspects, but maybe separated from the experiments that we did and gaps that we identified, and then also to separate it from any controversial topics like potentially what are the right approaches, etc. So this would allow maybe some to divide and conquer approach, and we want to make some concrete progress in this area. So what we are expecting from this, we are expecting to have a reference documents for the concept of digital map, independent of which approaches or which gap we identified, you know, so that we can all agree, so that all the other activities could have a shared terminology document and a concept document that we can refer to. The goal would be that in the working group we agree key terms and their definitions, and then that we go wider. And we want to have inventory of use cases and requirements for digital map. In this document, we have terminology. Digital twin was taken from NMRG. For topology, believe it or not, we could not find it anywhere. So we add a definition here. So any feedback would be really welcome. Topology layer, digital map modeling, digital map model, digital map data, plus use cases and requirements. So we believe this document is ready for adoption. It went, although you can see 0.0 version, there it has been going through the multiple revisions from the OPS AWG to the digital map draft, and now this is the part that is taken to this draft, but it's gone through several reviews. We believe it's ready for adoption, and we believe it's really important to agree terminology for all other digital map activities.
Matt?
Yes. Olga, if you can just please go back to the slide in which you you show, I would say, the rationale for the splitting and why it is interesting to have this draft. So yeah, so while you are showing this one, I think as we can suggest to the working group to consider the there's interest to I would say to start by adopting this document. So we'll be just starting that poll, and then we'll let you continue the rest of the presentation while we that poll is there. So the poll is started.
So there is someone in the queue, Matt. Do you want to do the poll before or after the feedback?
Yeah, we can. Yes, Italo?
Yes, I think it's a good idea to split the concept from the solution, because that's more where we are. And I agree with you that there is a lot of interest on this topic. About the maturity for working group document, I quickly look at it. Looks like there are some requirements may need to be some polishing, because they look a little bit toward biased toward a solution. And one of the big elephant in the room is the interaction between these use cases and other use cases. Are they going to be isolated, or they can be coexist? So I think this issue can be also addressed during working group process. So I don't see those blocking, but I'll let you and the chairs decide whether they are blocking or not for the adoption. But these are major issues that we need to address on this current version of the document. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your feedback. Like, I would really appreciate any comments. We have a document on the GitHub, and we have the document kind of email sent, so any feedback is really appreciated.
Hi, Nacho from Telefonica. I just wanted to make 2 comments. One of them, I told you one of our chats that we had, I think the document should elaborate more on the connection with the digital twin architecture proposed in NMRG. I know the terminology is used, but I think it could be better described. And the other comment is after the side meeting that we had this week, I have the impression that the current document is too much focused on the topology modeling, and I think this is limiting the scope of the document. I would say the digital map should tackle other use cases, like, for example, how do we connect the network topology with other kinds of data, like SANE for service assurance, the connection of the topology or with the inventory. So there are other use cases apart from the network topology. So these 2 comments.
Okay, thanks.
Well, when Diego here, when I first heard Nacho talking about the digital twin, etc., I was saying that I was going to disagree with him, but then the point is that I fully agree with the second comment, and I will go even in the introductory and the justification for it, I mean, for the idea and the concept of the digital map, I can agree that this has originated on the digital twin, but I would say that it's bigger than satisfying the digital twin. And probably this is something that we have to remark. This idea of the other use cases and how to build the links between different data that this can be relevant for the network model is something that probably, I mean, the digital twin is very important and we are working on that, etc. But it's a particular tool, while this is much more oriented into a general conceptual model of the network. And I think that's very important. We should remark it in the document.
Yeah, thanks, Diego. Thanks, everybody. Like, we would really appreciate feedback and engagement on the email, on the working group email, and we want to address all of the comments and enhance and add more terminology needed and add additional things that you think are needed. Dan?
Dan, Bell Canada. So on the comment on too much focus on topology for digital map, we're not saying to not focus on topology. I think it's needed. Yeah, just to clear.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, the approach here is well why it's focused on topology, because in our domain, I think topology is the core that brings everything else together, and we have so many use cases that are needed. Therefore, the map and therefore topology is something that we are focusing here, but we would add additional things if needed to be mentioned in terminology. Thanks.
Andrew Stone. I apologize. I kind of went through the document relatively quickly, so I might have missed it. I understand that the document basically tries to describe the concept of the map and multiple layers and the topologies within those layers, but it wasn't clear to me if there was also an intention to show the binding between resources that are used between those layers. So for example, you might have a topology in one layer and then itself projects itself to another layer for consumption by that layer. Is that intended to be captured in here, or is that something that's still to be looked at outside?
But that would be captured definitely in the modeling part and in the solutions part. But if you believe that some of those concepts are needed to be defined here, we could add additional definitions.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think from what I've seen in the past is one of the challenges is about mapping, especially identifiers to say, for example, this resource, this EVPN service, this SRv6 tunnel, whatever it might be, how does that map to that underlying IP topology, optical topology, and so on, and create those pointers, in a many-to-many kind of relation manner. So I'd be curious to see more in the document to cover that interlayer aspect of things.
What we wanted with this document is to take out from the other document the concepts and definitions and some use cases and high-level requirements, but we can add a specific requirement. There is a requirement for relationships, and so we can review that requirement, and maybe if you can send your comment and we can include it into the document.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so just for the record, I guess we have a fair amount of support to add up the document, but still we have two folks who indicated that they are objecting to the document. I wonder whether the folks who indicated that they are objecting to adoption, if they can go to the mic and explain their rationale, if it is possible.
Nacho Telefonica, I was one of the ones that said no, but I explained you the reasons. I think the document could be a bit more, let's say, elaborated, no, on the connection with architecture and clearly explain that, for example, the topology is one of the use cases of the digital map, to clearly state that.
Yeah, thanks, Nacho.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, just Nacho for the information. This is just a start. I would say the initial version of the document. This is not working with last call, so the document is not frozen. And please feel free to send contribution or text or comments to the list, and then we can work together with the authors, and then the next subject will be addressing all the comments. So thank you anyway, Nacho, for sharing your comment.
No, thank you. And also, I just wanted to say, I was talking with Oscar now. I fully agree with this work. This is something that it's much needed in IETF, but this is opening something that we could have here enough work for creating a new working group even. There's a lot of things to do here. So, yes.
So I didn't object to it not being I didn't object to it, but so I did vote no. But I noticed that the way that the poll was phrased, this question to the chairs, was phrased in a negative way. Is it worth doing a positive one to see the support side as well? Is that your plan? Otherwise, how do you read it? But
when I saw the question on the screen, I realized that people might be confused. And you saw people say, yes, I support, but the question is, do I object? And then I will let Matt answer how we came up with that question, because I'm an author on that document. So Matt, do you want to address this one?
Yeah, I think we can just run again the poll, I would say, with the positive one, and see how we can take it from just to confirm the precedent one. So.
And the rationale for the question, Rob, was to say it seemed that we need to have that document anyway for the concept before going further. That's why we're asking, is there like strong objection on progressing this? It was the rationale of the question, do you object in the first poll?
And the goal also was to engage by the audience with the feedbacks, because we didn't get too many comments on the NMOP mailing list.
I think that we are getting the same result as the previous one. I think that we can just close it right now. So thank you, Olga, for presenting.
So I think I have 12 seconds, so I will not really have time to talk through another status of all of these things, but maybe just to go to the next steps. After adoption, we want to submit the initial version of RFC 8345 bis, more feedback for augmentation analysis from the authors. I did engage with lots of you in terms of emails and discussions, but anyone, please, who I didn't engage with, please contact me. We want to do new versions of other draft. For the next hackathon, we want to add more layers. SIV6 is priority, more operator labs, more vendors. And there are some different opinions in terms of modeling. We had a side meeting. Please read the email that I have. Italo, please reply if you don't agree with any of my conclusions. So we are proposing to go ahead for the next hackathon and show different approaches. Thank you very much.
So just because I was in the side meeting and I was somewhat watching as an observer between the different people who had different opinions on this, because I haven't read the different drafts. It wasn't clear to me that 8345 bis was necessarily the right way forward. Or if it did go that way and you added in these properties into the base model, I think there also needs to be an analysis of, do you have to update all the other models where these definitions have moved from? Because it felt like there's potentially quite a wide impact on existing RFCs and other drafts if you go to that model. Because I think the one thing we want to avoid in my mind is, I don't think you want to have the same properties being modeled in two places. And I felt like that's where you could end up here. So I think we need to go tread this one carefully, I think.
Yeah. So based on the analysis that we currently have, out of 52 active ones which are augmenting, I think majority of them do not need to be changed. But as the things are, we won't be able to do the proper generic digital map like for different silos, because they're using different approaches. So that is our opinion. They're all okay for their functional domain, and all the data is needed there in all of those. But there is a problem with 11 or 15 out of 52 that have topological concepts defined in their own way, or gaps, which are for their specific function or specific technology.
Okay, because that's different interpretation I took out of meetings. I thought it was possible to do the digital map using the other models, but the complexity of doing that was very, very high. As in pulling the T topology, that one had a lot of elements. I think that was my understanding of it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding.
Yeah. The minor changes in the core are needed, and minor changes to the others. We are not proposing moving attributes, moving, traffic engineering or assurance or same. We are just saying, if you have maybe some topology entity defined outside of the core model, which was the initial intention of the core model, maybe we align and see if it could be moved.
But does that mean that those properties in T topology that are relating to defining the relationship, are they now in two places? How do you know which to use? How do you manage those?
There are ways to align it so we can go further into the discussions, like how to do it potentially with the least impact. But the goal is backward compatible solution, definitely.
If you change with the other RFCs and drafts, yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So what we want to do now, it's the last part of the charter, which is about an update to the RFC 3545, which is the requirements from operators. And we want to explain what has been happening lately. So there is like an IAB workshop called NMOPs, next era of network management separation. So is there anybody so I presented this in the ops area and also in NMRG. Is there anybody in the room who had no clue what this workshop is? And it's perfectly fine, to cover it. Show of hands. Okay, very good. So this is a workshop, and the goal, as you see in the NMOP charter, we have to find a way to update RFC 3545 and to collect new requirements from operators. So with the IAB and a couple of us, so Matt, myself, Mahesh as an AD, and the IAB members, I see Chin Wu in the room, we arrived to a proposal to do this workshop. This workshop, there are tentative dates in December. If you go somewhere at the bottom, you will see it. This is going to be a set of virtual meetings, I think 3 times 3 hours in consecutive days. The goal is to collect the new requirements for operators, to look at the state of what happened since that RFC 3545 in 2002, which, by the way, was the trigger to create NetConf, and as a consequence, NetMods, and as a consequence of the feature that are described as requirements in that RFC 4545. In that RFC as well, there is recommendations. What should the IETF and the ISG do? One of them was like, don't do any longer read-write MIP modules. So it became an ISG statement later on. So this is the type of things that we want to have in this workshop. Since it's a fact that we have somehow less operators than back then, we're going to have an effort to do outreach to places where operators go. This is like Nanoc. This is RIPE in Europe. This is Apricot in Asia. This is like Autocon. So the idea there is to collect feedback of these operators and try to document this. So this is a high-level description of what we want to do. And if there are no questions on this, we might be moving to the to the next presentation, which is about the operator requirements.
Hello, everyone. This is Luis. I will present the status of the draft on behalf of my co-authors, Med, Oscar, Thomas, and Reshad. So as you can see on the timeline, so we have just released this week a new version of the draft, so we will go quickly through that. So as Benoit was commenting, there was an initial workshop some time ago that produced, as a result, we produced an RFC, this RFC 3535, that somehow has been the catalyst of all the work being developed in IETF for NetConf and YANG. After that RFC, so 20 years ago, as I said, the point is that, there are no total adoption, or let's say partial adoption of the models that have been developed. There are yet operators working with CLI, SLMP, maybe on the legacy install base, or maybe even in new install base. There is also, new changes, new needs on the service, on the management of the network. So basically, the situation has changed from what was the situation 20 years ago. So with that, we realized that there is a need for performing a reality check. What is the status in comparison with what the expectation 20 years ago, refreshing the deployment assumptions, so what is now needed, check if new requirements are emerging, that is actually the case, and also assessing the blocking points and what can be improved, what can be done from IETF, basically. So we started to report all this view in the document. For this new version, from Brisbane to up to now, we have included some new, let's say, observation. The point that there is too much time between the publication of a new networking functionality up to the point that the associated jump model is developed. We drop an example there that time lapse of 5 years. So there will be for sure different cases, but also we find these kind of situations. Also, the availability of open source tools. In some cases, for other deployments, let's say, that are not related to the NetCon and YAN, there are more availability of open source. In the case of NetCon YAN, in some cases, we have some limitations on this. Also, the fact that the transition to, or the trend to network appification, we refer here as an example, the working group for the peering API. That could be a case, even though there are YAN capabilities or YAN models as well that could be used for that fact. So somehow we need to find the proper link between all those efforts. The fact of having new service approaches, all this, which is around the edge cloud computing, the cloud native approach, the Kubernetes, these kind of things. So there are interactions from those services in the network, but somehow the way of linking that with the reality of the work on modeling with YAN is not yet there. Another fact is like the case that the network becomes consumable, and this relates with the effort about the slicing, for instance, and also somehow can also bridge with the application that we have mentioned before. Apart from that, we also has started to state some individual assessments of what went well, what went wrong, and what can be improved as well. So this is somehow, you can check on the document, and we are trying to collect an overall view so that we can identify the points. As said by Benoit as well, this is part of the milestones defined and work items defined in NMOP. So the original milestone was dated for September this year. We are probably far from having all that ready, so we will keep continuing on that. But the important thing is also what to do with the workshop that Benoit has commented before. So here we can consider to submit this draft as well as a kind of input for this workshop. So yeah, as an individual contribution, so that can be discussed and can be put in common with other participants in the workshop. But also there will be the idea will be to keep an NMOP document reflecting all the work that we are collecting. The reason for that is that the outcome from the workshop could be published on an RFC from the IIB, but will not reflect the IETF consensus. So keeping the document here could help us to collect that consensus and generate an outcome from IETF with, let's say, all the inputs from the different interested parties. So yeah, here what we would like to bring into the discussion is if we go for option 1, for option 2, or for both of them. Our view would be that it is appropriate to keep the work in NMOP, even though we can for sure deliver it as an input for the workshop. And that's basically the presentation. I made it short.
Very good. Thank you, Luis. So what is at stake here? Whenever there is an IAB workshop, the IAB is going to publish an RFC with the observation conclusions of the workshop. Now we have also in this working group that we could accept the working document. The thing is that we don't know yet what will be the content of the IAB workshop. If it's a one-to-one mapping with what we have, what you have, then actually we don't need to publish anything, but we don't know. So any views on what we should be doing? We accept this working document here and we keep working on this, and then we'll see what the outcome will be, but it might not be published, or we say we don't accept and it's input to the IAB workshop as individual contributor. The input to the workshop will anyway happen one way or the other, individual or workgroup document. Rob.
I would suggest that we keep as an individual draft at this point in time, because otherwise I think sort of biases the input into that process if it looks like it's an adopted document into that workshop. So basically I think we should be waiting for the workshop to happen and see where the dust settles from that, and then we'll have a better idea as to what we want to publish after the IB is published. I don't know, it depends how long it takes them to publish the conclusions. A good like 3 or 4 months at least normally.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And what would you say to the AD who did this charter and put the milestone of September? Don't answer, that's fine.
Right, Mahesh. So I think even with the previous workshop that happened in 2002, what RFC 3535, as I understand it, captured was the requirements, with or without whether IETF would work on all of the items, some of the items, or none of the items. So if the question, if I understand the question is, do we accept RFC 3535 biz, or whatever you call it 20 years later, that still can be an input to NMOP. And it's up to the individual working groups to decide whether they want to pick it up or not. Is that a fair understanding, at least, of what you're asking for?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have an opinion on one or two, but for me, the IAB workshop will happen. I think we should try to avoid to give the impression that whatever are the input and the discussion in the workshop, this group or individual through these documents try to jump to other conclusions. So I think let's the workshop happen. And that will give us, I think, some guidance about what could be the future of this document. But really try to avoid to say, irrespective of what happens, we already have our ideas and we will pursue them. So that could be a bad impression, but I understand it's just a general comment.
So Laurent, question to you, please. So do you agree that anyway, this feedback, whether it is individual or working group, should be given to the IAB workshop?
Yes, I think as an input to the workshop, that's the best step as of today. As an individual opinion, not for the...
Okay. A poll? Okay, yeah. We'll do a poll. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you prepare a poll, Matt? So, Rüdiger.
Okay, Rüdiger Volk. Okay, I think number one and number two are not mutually exclusive. Though kind of trying to figure out a working group consensus before input to the workshop does not seem to make a lot of sense. And I'm not completely sure whether at the end of the workshop, the conclusion will be, yes, it makes sense to continue work on this draft. And what are the ideas that need to be enhanced? Or, well, okay, this was a valuable input like others as well.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Niels?
Yeah. Niels Warnke, Deutsche Telekom. I would also support that. Let's not jump to a consensus that might be contradictory to what comes out of the workshop. I mean, that's, from my point of view, the worst, or one of, at least a bad result for that. So let's be open. I do think it's a good idea to have this draft, and I totally support that, but I would support or prefer to have it as an individual one.
Thank you. Thank you. Rob?
And I guess just to reinforce my point is, if we do adopt this and if we do send it into that workshop, as it's coming from this working group, I'd ideally like to see a consensus call, a working group last call done on that document and achieve and pass working group last call before we say this is the input from the working group to this IAB program? Because otherwise, I think it's going to misrepresent.
That's a fair point.
And I don't think there's time to. Well, I doubt you get time to do that. But.
All right. Thank you. So the result is like Chen Yunqiu, please go.
So this is Qingwu, and I think probably the IB workshop will happen. Actually, also will produce this IB workshop report. So we need to figure out a relationship. Actually, probably, I think this work could be the input to the IB workshop. And but if IB also produce the workshop report, how this relate to this document, so it's need to be cautious.
I think there is, unless someone says otherwise, I think there is no objection, and actually we should give this feedback to the IB workshop. The only question was individual draft or kind of consensus telling the working group believes that. This is the question, but the input, it's obviously valid. So what was the result of the poll? It's 8 yes and 12 no. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, what do we have? So next we have Nacho, knowledge graph for Yang-based network management.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. We have much time. So in this presentation, I want to introduce this new draft, which is about using knowledge graphs for network management with focus on Yang. So first of all, why NMOP? So just a reminder of the scope of NMOP. The idea in NMOP is to discuss operational issues facing the deployment of networks based on short-term experiments in the scope of 1-2 years, and in particular discussing the use cases and requirements for solving anticipated problems in the management of the networks. No? So this said, what's the problem that we aim to tackle in this work? Well, we see that the network is full of heterogeneous silos of data, and this is limiting the AI applications to unlock new use cases. No? So what we're trying to do here is to find new ways for these applications to find these data silos, understand them, access them, and especially combine them for these new use cases. This heterogeneity is well described in the network telemetry framework in RFC 9232, which describes this variety of protocols like SNMP, IPFix, all the protocols based on Yang, formats, also levels or planes like the forwarding plane, the control plane, and so on. So if we just take a look at the Yang ecosystem, we see that this is already a big challenge. There has been a tsunami of data models, as we all are aware of, with standard data models, proprietary, open source, also at different levels of abstraction, at the device level, network, service levels. We see a variety of protocols as well, like NetConf, RESTconf, now Yang Push, GNMI is always there, and many formats. So what we propose is to leverage this new paradigm of the knowledge graph to enable the integration of all these heterogeneous data silos. And knowledge graphs allows us to do this by building a semantic layer based on formal knowledge representation. And this is commonly known as ontologies, taxonomies, and the like. So in this document, we provide guidelines for building knowledge graphs, in particular from Yang data. And these guidelines cover 3 main aspects. First, graph standards. Here we have the commonly known standards from the semantic web, RDF, all, and more recently, label property graphs with popular solutions like Neo4j. The second aspect is the development of ontologies. In this sense, we are exploring standard methodologies, but also now there are options to automatically extract knowledge from the sources. And the third aspect is also very important, which is the construction of the knowledge graph itself. This is the data pipeline for collecting the data from our network and integrating it in the knowledge graph. And this work is to give you more context, is the result of an ongoing research at Telefonica that we call Candle. And here I posted our latest paper that can give you more details. So potential applications for knowledge graph in the IETF. So the first that comes to mind is service assurance. Here, if you have a look at the sign, this is basically a graph of dependencies between services and symptoms. No? And the idea here is that by integrating the service assurance graph data in the knowledge graph, we could combine it with other data like topology, inventory. Another potential application is network digital twins. Here, the knowledge graph aligns well with the proposed architecture in NMRG, and also with all the work that it's being done in the digital map, because precisely the work in the digital map is about finding these common concepts between different YAM modules. And in this sense, the knowledge graph could be the technology to realize that, no? To essentially integrate these silos of data. And another potential application is the data manifest. This is a typical example of metadata management, where in the knowledge graph, we could have the data and the metadata explicitly connected, so we could have a contextualized understanding of the data, no? Like how the frequency with which I'm collecting data from my network. No? Some challenges that should be addressed in order to improve the adoption of knowledge graphs for network management. Well, here I have listed a few in the draft. There are more. One of them is, of course, the development of ontologies. Ontologies are one of the pillars of knowledge graphs. And this is a big challenge because skills on semantic modeling are required. And this is a mostly manual procedure. Also, scalability. The knowledge graph must cope with the scale of the networks. So in this sense, distributed and federated architectures could be explored. Also, it has to cope with all the volume collected of data collected from the network and support real-time use cases. And additionally, not limit the application of knowledge graphs for network monitoring, but also explore the application for network configuration. And to conclude, some pending issues and next steps. The first one is the document should keep the focus on YAM, or broaden the scope with other data sources like IPFix or SNMP. And the other question is to confirm whether this work fits within NMOP or maybe in other groups like NMRG, where I've also introduced this draft. And for the next steps, well, I know all this story sounds very abstract. So in order to help people better understand what we are trying to do here, the goal is to implement a prototype, in particular based on the augmented YAM library work, and build a knowledge graph collecting this YAM library data. And the plan is to have this prototype ready by the next hackathon in Dublin and share some results. And also, as part of the next steps, the idea is to explore integration with other works in IETF, like integrating the knowledge graphs with the YAM Kafka architecture. here, there are several pieces that could be leveraged to build knowledge graphs. And of course, we'll keep collecting feedback from the working group and looking for interested contributors. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nacho.
So sorry, I haven't had a chance to read your draft, but in terms of your presentation, I think it's a really interesting idea. So I think I look forward to looking what you present in IETF 121. That'd be good.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you.
We are perfectly on time for the 5 minutes discussion, as mentioned in the agenda. So at least one topic to address. So there is, like in September 11th, an interim meeting on network anomaly, right? So feel free to, we'll do a call for an agenda. And we've got a question with Matt, it's like, do we want to have other interim meetings? So in one of the slides, I think it was at the beginning of the chair, do we need one interim on the digital map? Do we want to have other interim meetings? Do we want to have like, you know, monthly interim thing like this? Tell us, what do you think?
Envoyé Bell Canada. Sorry, I closed my laptop. I think yes, because it's a lot to digest in a single meeting every 3 months. So having interim meeting will help us to understand a little bit more and then socialize more before the meeting.
So there is one on anomaly detection. So the other two topics we have is digital map and incident network anomaly. So we have one on network anomaly already. So what, young push, digital map?
Young push and digital map makes sense because I think they are close to one another.
Okay.
I mean, the vision behind.
Okay, thank you.
So was Dan saying having one combined for two of those or not? I don't know. But if we do want a digital map, I think there's two aspects to it. One is the digital map is the concept and the technology, what's trying to be solved there. And I think the other one is the same comment I made earlier in terms of working out how we update the RFCs or extend the RFCs. That set, I think there's a knotty problem there. Certainly in that side meeting, it looked like there was quite, at least a few different views, and trying to resolve those I think will take some effort. So maybe having an interim meeting to try and progress that would be helpful. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Hi, Italo Busi from Huawei. Definitely we need to have a more discussion on digital maps. It's clear that we have started and we are working on it. I'm not sure whether the interim meeting is more effective versus maybe the weekly WebEx that we do in other working groups. I will think about that.
So the weekly meetings you
Where,
do
where people can be informal and discuss different opinions and then try to outline a list what we agree, what we don't agree, what can be the question that we ask to the working group to get forward.
So what you have in mind is like the type of IV weekly meetings?
Something similar, yes, yes.
And it's not a design team, it's a weekly meeting open to everybody, is that right?
Of course, open to everybody, yes, yes.
Hi, Oscar González, Telefónica. In this last month, it was very useful to have a joint NMOP this meeting for the digital map and the topology, also getting the TE experts that develop the TE topology and that have developed, let's say, many of the models of the topology. So I think it's very useful also to keep that relationship ongoing, because also it might imply also some work in this and work here. So I suggest also that the activity on digital map, especially in the topology, we keep also the alignment with this.
Thank you.
Adrian Farrell, I very much expect that it will be useful to have interim meetings to talk about terminology, but I'm not ready to say put one in the diary because that's going to force my hand on doing the work. So what I'd like to do is spin it a bit and see if I can advance some of the issues and then collect ones that need discussion and then come to you and say, can we have an interim in however much warning you have to give?
Right. That on that specific one, in the end, you had like 12 people in the room plus 2. And I think that maybe these are the key contributors and they need to sort it out maybe themselves.
Sure, if you're saying go away and self-organize with your own design team or whatever, then I can do that. I just don't want to exclude the working group.
That was my next point, yes. So whatever works for you, Adrian.
Oh, right. We're going to call everything a thing. Okay, so we'll have the network thing detection. And what happens is you see a thing in the network and you report it as a thing, and that goes up as a thing. And then we just have one definition and everything's done.
Would that be a problem?
No, you say
or
no, that would be
false
fine.
or
No, it's a thing. We'll just call it a thing. Yeah. And that
Right,
makes things work really easily for me.
All right.
Hi, Olga.
Let's close the
I think we need to continue discussions definitely and to address whether we want to go with 2 hackathons in IETF 121 and whether that's the right approach. So from traffic engineering guys, maybe we need to get the feedback about that and agreement. In the case that we go ahead with that, we need to agree the use case, we need to agree more specific things. So I think inter-meeting would be great and to show the progress. In regards to status, weekly statuses, yeah, I think it may be a little bit too often, but because there are a lot of topics, you know, it will end up being, you know, maybe monthly meeting for the digital map. Thank you.
So just one last thing is that the weekly meetings, they work, I think, well in Ivy because there is one focus. Here we have got different interests in Young Push and digital map is in network anomaly. Yeah, right. Dan, and you are, okay. Quickly
Last in
then.
the queue. This whole work, we've talked about this during this week. It's taking way too long. Over the last 5-10 years, 5-ish years. So having regular meetings is very much needed because of those reasons, to debunk or review Adrian definitions, which I would welcome as well. So we move the work a bit faster, we change the beat. That's my last comment since it's closed.
And we'll end with that statement. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Matt. I realize I'm losing my hair.